So why did I write the book? Why did I write a book about Britain and the EU? Well, I'd been working in Brussels for 5 years, and apart from driving me a little bit crazy, it really was very obvious that the British relationship with the European Union wasn't working very well, and pressure was growing here in Westminster for a new type of relationship, and it just seemed that the pressure was becoming unavoidable to have a rethink about Britain's relationship with the EU, and probably a referendum to follow that on the results. So I thought there is a tremendous gap in the market for a book that explains not why we should leave particularly, because that's what you hear quite a lot, moaning about the EU, about this and that. What we never hear is what it means for Britain, what our new relationship should be with Europe, but what are the possibilities for our relationship with the rest of the world in trade and travel, and what it means when we want to live, work or go to college in Europe. These things will change dramatically if we make a break with the European Union, and these are the things which are the substance of the book. I think that in Paris and Berlin, they are just beginning now to realise that the situation in Britain as regards the EU is becoming quite critical. I think for many years they've dismissed the Eurosceptics or even UKIP and the withdrawalists as a bunch of eccentrics who don't really represent mainstream opinion either politically or in the country at large. And I think that given the pace of events, the pace of change in just this last year, where Europe has shot up the agenda for many, especially conservative backbenchers, that it's becoming better known in Europe now that the UK has to sort out what its relationship really is going to be for the next 40 years, because 2013 is the 40th year of Britain joining, and we haven't had a referendum since 1975 on whether we should stay or go or what our relationship should be. So I think the pressure is really building now. One line of thought is that UKIP are simply the repository for votes from people who do not want to vote for a governing party. They want a party that's agitating and different and offering something else, and so they're drawn to UKIP, not particularly because of Europe. And I'm sure some voters are drawn to UKIP, not really because of Europe, but because they're a party of protest. But I do think there's a good number of voters, and a growing number of voters, who are drawn to UKIP because their main platform is to have a referendum on the EU and to withdraw from the EU. When you look around at what happened at the last election, you can see that the size of the UKIP vote is greater than the size of the Labour winning margin in more than 20 or around 20 constituencies, and some quite prominent MPs like Ed Balls and John Denham, whose winning margin was lower than the UKIP vote in that constituency. So you can see the appeal for the Conservatives of doing something to neutralise UKIP and trying to win as many of those votes as possible. Now, I don't suggest that all of the UKIP votes will go to the Conservatives. That would be a mistake to think that, but many of them will. And when the election is going to be as tight as the 2010 election, let's remember the Conservatives didn't win the 2010 election, they're going to need every vote they can get to try and win the 2015 election. So I can see the temptation to move towards the UKIP agenda. So if you ask, will Britain survive if we leave the European Union? Of course we will. Of course Britain will survive. The sky won't fall in, but there'll be a period of tremendous turbulence and rebalancing that will be almost overwhelming for the government of the day, if you think of the tremendous range of things that will need to be reordered and renegotiated, plus the opportunities that come up for trading and with the rest of the world that need to be acted upon quite quickly so we can take full advantage of leaving the EU. It will be a very turbulent time for the country, but one which I'm certain Britain will come through with with some aplomb, but also with many foreseeable and unforeseeable consequences.